Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Jay and Leamon, and today we will be getting back into Unhallowed Data with Act 4, The Devil's Due. So this one is, as Jay brought up before we started recording, the overview looks short, but in both of our experiences, this ended up being quite a lot fit into this, and it took up some nice time. I won't say it was like nothing seemed to me, at least, to drag out, but it was a lot fuller of an act than it might appear on the surface.
Yeah, I think it's a much more role play heavy one.
Yes, and it is a nice one to get into your role playing, and not just. I mean, yes, there are some shooty scenes and encounters and stuff, but there is a lot of role play, investigation, and stuff like that that fleshes out the act. Um, so the end of Act 3 was the big fight, whether you it was with the dragon, the director, or the Tharkold thrall that had started opening the Hellmouth. Basically, the party learns that the next part of things is happening in Spain, so it's going over to Spain, um, in Barcelona, a cyber papacy dominant zone, to figure out the next step. And they are to, as scene one says, get thee to a nunnery. So it's we've been to a couple of abbeys, and now there is a nunnery that
Yep.
has things happening. So it says that the train hub at Barcelona is massive. When the Storm Knights arrive from the main European Cybertrain line, it's a long walk with mechanized moving walkways. So as a game master, you can kind of present that. I always enjoyed with the Cyber Papacy kind of bringing those type of things to life. Like the first time they uh, went to a big city and we're checking in and stuff, describing kind of how the customs and immigration type stuff worked in the cyber papacy, having hard light constructs and holo cherubs flying through the air, identifying people, doing retina and fingerprint scans, and determining if they had criminal pasts and bringing up their piety scores and all of those things. So this is a, a chance to kind of bring in how a massive hub of transportation in the cyber papacy would work. And there are certain things on the screen, and they say that the there's a massive cyber papacy cruise ship which travels back and forth between Barcelona and Rio de Janeiro, which is kind of a little foreshadowing. If
Yeah.
your players catch up on that, then there's a high likelihood that later in the adventure that they will be taking that
If
cruise
another
ship.
city is named by name, it's like,
Right. Um, so that's kind of like I said, a little forewarning for thing to that's going to happen. But they're looking for the Pedralbus, and again, my pronunciation could be really bad, especially I cannot do a rolling R to save my life.
Pedralbes.
Yeah, Pedralbes. Monastery is west of the main town, not on any of the major routes. You have a little easy persuasion test to be able to rent a little car to get yourself then. Different success levels in this get you a better vehicle, so I think that's
Yeah.
kind of a fun thing to do. And then there's other things like Streetwise to allow you to find a best route. Um, and one of the rules that started coming into effect that I kind of liked was some of the okay, we don't want to bog down the travel, but we don't want the travel to be completely minimalized. So, hey, if roll a streetwise to find an easy route. If you don't, then it's taken a long time. You've just done a lot of traveling yourself. You're tired, so you're fatigued. In those circumstances, you don't want them to be a oh fatigue. We just sit for a couple of minutes and then it's
Yeah.
gone. You have to make those persistent fatigues and come up with a specific situation that they can use to recover, which could be a you find a nice spot to sleep for the night and are able to uh, have your rest, and then you're able to get those back. Otherwise, there's no point in having those type of things.
Yeah.
But at the monastery, they finally get to the monastery and they see scrawled on the side of the wall, the devil is not welcome in Catalonia, and they kind of come across, I believe, a let's see, when the Storm Knights first arrive on the scene, the crowd isn't sure. So there's a mob, basically. It says a crowd, but there's basically a mob that wishes to basically stone somebody in the abbey.
Numbering in the hundreds.
Yes, so that's a hey Storm Knights, you're not going to be able, or and a lot of these people, yeah, they're a mob, but they're not necessarily evil, so it would be a bad PR for the Delphi Council to just open fire at a mob. But the mob is demanding that the nuns give up one of the women they have taken in. It was a woman who had been supposedly possessed by demons. So the nearby town folk and stuff are not happy to know that somebody who was once possessed by a demon is in this nunnery, this monastery that is near them, because they figure if you've been possessed once, it's very easy for you to be possessed more than once. So there can be a some interactions between the mob and the Storm Knights, determining whether or not they can get through, they can learn what's going on, and maybe settle the crowd down somewhat. Um, so, what are your thoughts on just this first part of it? They arrive in Barcelona, they're in a big area, they go to the monastery, and there's a crowd outside.
Well, first of all, I did an audit on all of my information and found out I had made mistakes about what characters we had, so and who was running what, and so I've corrected it at this point. So we have a dwarf dragon warrior Greymane. We have the cyber papacy drone jockey Tomas. We have a Nodder Lucian, and we have a Tharkold mutant psychic Ray. Okay, so that affects how things are going to be getting dealt with, because they none of them are very sociable. Probably the mutant is the highest, and that kind of leads in. So when they are arriving into the cyber papacy was nice. I usually like to explain how wonderful it looks at first, and then like as they get closer to things, it's like, oh wait, you know. But at this point, they'd been to the cyber papacy a bunch of times, so there wasn't as much of a need to go into it. So they managed to, I think they took public transit to get there, but they eventually got there, and there's this big crowd. They do not interact well with the crowd. They push their way through to try to get to the gate, and people are like chanting demons, demons. Basically, it's just the law of suspicion
Mm-hmm.
is ramping everybody up because they know there's a wing of like possessed women that are being treated, and there things have been happening in the neighborhood which they think is related to a demon, which in fact it actually is, but not necessarily for the reason they think. But So the party gets into an argument. I don't remember if a Cosm card was involved or anything, but things start to get violent. And that is when, as you mentioned, shooting a bunch of people or attacking them would be bad PR for the Delphi Council. But Ray is saying, look, why don't we just yell that we're church special envoys and then start shooting people? Uh, so, um, but that gets shot down, and they eventually. The host gets summoned at some point, and they eventually have to talk everything down and reveal that they are church special envoys to get let in. But and I don't remember why, but for some reason the dwarf Greymane is not allowed inside. Um, I think it's because these two were actually cyber papal characters, and Ray was a woman. But
Hmm.
for some reason, the dwarf was just too much, and he might have insulted someone. You know,
Right.
dwarves. Um, so he had to remain outside with the crowd, and the rest of them were taken in. And so Greymane found like a little remote area overlooking the monastery, and made, because he's an Eilish character, he just pitched camp and like got out his tent. And this is when we started to go on about the pig in the poke, how it was
Uh-huh.
the best magic item ever. And so he set up this cheery little campfire, and every once in a while church police would come by, and he would be like, piss off, I'm a special
Am
envoy.
I?
So then meanwhile the rest of the party did get let into the monastery to speak with the sisters, but it was looking dicey for a minute there.
Yes. So one of the things that happens is a host or three will pop up to disperse the crowd um, if needed. But I want to say both of my parties were able to talk, at least at this point, talk the crowd down. Um, thought they had done so very successfully, but as will
Mhm.
come up later, we'll say why that wasn't completely successful. And then use persuasion or whatever to get entrance into the monastery and meet the nuns there. So there's a section called Meet and Greet, and very similar to in the Abbey when you had the different monks that each had a name and they had their own kind of their history, their own background, their own motivations, and their own ways that they'll interact with the party. There are also all the nuns, like the major nuns there, are described with backgrounds and things. So the first is Mother Maria Consuela, who has her as a harsh and hard woman in her late 50s. Basically, she does have the best interest of her sisters and her wards at heart, but takes a tough love approach that doesn't always work. So you can kind of play her like that. There are certain things also, like she says the ladies may stay here, but if you're a guy, she don't care. Uh, Special envoy or not, once it's time to sleep, you're out.
Yeah.
You're out. You can come back in the morning. She even goes so far to say not even Jean Malraux himself. So that's when you know things are pretty. That's a rule that's not gonna get broke easy. Um, so then there are various sisters. So there's Sister Julia or Yulia, depending on how you want to go with it. But she seems curious, excited, with a sharp mind, very engaged. Um, it really, like, she's almost like the monk who was very cordial and wants to talk to the storm knights, and that the one little possible suspicion, I don't think this came up in either of my groups, but since you actually had a psychic person, uh, we might have had one in one, but they didn't do anything. It says if an interaction attack or some form of magical or psychic probe is used, she displays unnatural resistance. Her defense is 40, which is completely outrageous. Um,
Yes.
and it's and for good for a real reason, not a me going, oh, that's outrageous. It's another stat mistake. No, it's not a stat block mistake. It's a that's what she has. Um, she doesn't even though like if it's done to her, she doesn't even realize something happened. So she doesn't look at him like all, what are you trying to do to me? She just acts, she thinks everything is just going normal, so it probably would cause some suspicion, but you don't know why. So I'm curious. When your party met Sister Yulia, what did they actually interact or do
I'll
something
admit
like
that
this?
I'll admit that I called her Julia.
Uh
So no, because the psychic was a kineticist with
Okay.
pyrokinetics and strangle and all that kind of stuff, not and mend, not no telepathy this time.
So your group was then
She was
similar to
more,
mine.
yeah, she was more of a combat
Hmm.
type because she was that, and she was also a mutant with metal infused skin and cybernetic sympathy. So, and enhanced reflexes. So she was very much a combat character and stood out, which I believe now that I think about it, might be part of why the crowd was riled up too.
So then they have the next nun is Yovanka, and it says that she is beautiful but withdrawn from a Roma family up the coast. She doesn't like being touched, especially by Sister Yulia. Keeps her distance from everybody. Um, it says her story told by Yulia, unless a very difficult persuasion gets it out of her herself, is that she was possessed by the devil on her wedding night and stabbed her husband to death with a knife. Um, Basically, that's not quite the truth. Her dark secret is that she has not been possessed, but she is a latent psychic with a low precog skill, kind of saw some evil things that her husband did and stabbed him because of the premonitions, the understanding of that. She doesn't, since she's kind of now in the cyber papacy, which is a non-psychic place, doesn't quite understand what happened, so is going along with that narrative, not because it's a lie to her, but because that's the thing within her reality that makes sense. I was
Mhm.
possessed by a demon and I did this bad, or it caused me to do this bad thing because she can't understand I had psychic powers that showed me how horrible person my husband was and the bad things he was going to do. Um, but and her little quote is, I want to leave this place, but there's nowhere else to go. Evil would follow me wherever I went anyway. So she's kind of very reserved, uh, kind of has figured out that this is her fate and try to make the best of of her thing. So um, I want to say my players again just kind of, and when I played and when I game master just kind of took her as what was said. I don't think any of them ever found out that she was actually a psychic at some point or anything. They kind of went along with what had been presented to them. So, do you have anything different or anything interesting about Jovanka?
I remember my group did find out she was psychic, I think by the end. I have no memory of how. It might have been like Destiny card related or
Uh-huh.
something, like from an idea card or something. But I so eventually they did find out, and Ray basically took her out of the nunnery to the Delphi Council. That was one
Uh-huh.
of the big things that happened at the end of this.
Oh, nice, nice. Um, so then the next is Camilla, which is the youngest woman in the ward and is by far the most lively, which will come to play later.
Mhm.
It says that she is dressed in a nun's habit like everybody else, but she's modified hers a little bit to be a little provocative, to be a little not nunnish. So this is, if you have visuals, this is where you'll find lots of stuff on the internet if you want to go that way. But she really doesn't want to be there. She's the one that, like the complete opposite of Yovanka. She says, "Look, I don't know anything about demons. I don't believe in such nonsense. The church is keeping me prisoner here. They're repressing me." And then she's like, kind of maybe flirt with somebody, and then like say, "Hey, get me out of here, please, get me out of here." So that's kind of her thing. Sister, and since the mother is Maria Consuela, is sort of the very much like the abbot. She's in charge and is like, "You're here. You got to leave. You know, before bed time if you're male," but kind of leaving the guiding tour or whatever to Sister Yulia, very much like the abbot kind of did with the other monk there. So she's explains to the party that Camilla's experience left her unbalanced and dangerous to the community at large. She doesn't have the signs of any demonic taint above her, but she's definitely rambunctious. And Sister Yulia will keep an eye on any Storm Knight who looks twice at Camilla and break them up. I remember in the one that I was a player, there were a couple of times where we were just trying to get information from Camilla, and it was seen as a, "Oh, look, that guy's over there talking with her," and
Yeah.
we gotta stop that for. So there is that. So did you have anything to add to the Camilla?
They didn't really talk to her very much. So both Lucian is a hacker, total antisocial. Thomas is a drone guy who prefers talking to drones to people. And then Ray talked to her briefly and then immediately was like, forget this. She's useless. And then stopped talking to her. So that was about it. So they
Uh,
didn't get accused of anything because it was Ray talking to her.
hmm Um, then there is Ophelia or Ophile. She's actually from, and I will pronounce it classical Latin, even though I know it's probably church Latin, but Mongo Veritas, just because if I said it in any other way, the my old professors would rise and come and beat me. So, but you can read the church Latin if you wanted to, but that is the source cosm, the source home of the cyber papacy. She sports 4 cybernetic limbs, and she says she is straight up a I was a cyber witch. I thought I could control it, and you know things happened, and I did a spell. Was possessed by a demon. It took me, kind of locked me out of my whole body. The church was able to get rid of it, so now I'm devoting myself to the church. So she is a 100% um, believer of the cyber papacy. Not anti-witch so far as to kill them on sight, but do everything that she can to try to convince any cyber witches or magic users out there that they are down the wrong path and they need to take her experience as a learning experience and get away from magic before the same bad thing happens to them. So you can play that up if you want, especially like in the one group I had, we did have a cyber witch, so there was some back and forth between those two.
We didn't have a cyber witch this time, and we had two cyber papacy characters, and they were
hmm
both like, "Yeah." They kind of agreed. Although there is more to her than what she's letting on.
Hmm.
This is, I mean, they basically again took that at face value and didn't really see anything weird about it.
Right. There's a lot of undertones type things that are could be going on. So then there is Carmen, which is a poor girl, or a nun, who had very harsh time. Again, this nunnery is kind of a once possessed by demons, is
Hmm.
the or had
Well,
some
one wing of it, yeah.
right, and that's where this is going. So Carmen uh, had lost her tongue and both eyes when a demon that seized her left. So she can hear, knows basic sign language that she can do, but you would have to talk to her and be able to understand sign language to understand what she says. It does say Sister Yulia again can interpret her if necessary. Appears calm, stable, and almost happy despite her loss. Um, and basically, the little quote Julia has for her is she says she remembers very little of it. The darkness that took her was so absolute. She saw evil and spoke evil, but now that evil is gone. So that's a chance for Storm Knights to see somebody who's been very harmed by a demon and have a little sympathy, and maybe uh, even if they have trouble communicating with her, do have that sympathy. And Storm Knights are supposed to be the heroes and see her, and on purpose see her as somebody that should need protection and to be taken care of type thing.
In my group, there was two big questions that they kept asking. Is like, why has she not been given cyber eyes? Right? And two was it's kind of funny because I think it's a bit of a red herring because she's missing her tongue.
Hmm.
And throughout the rest of this adventure, they've been following these monks that have their lower jaws and tongues removed, right? So there was some theories as to was she part of this order
Uh-huh.
because she's not allowed to talk, right? And so they started asking about that, which totally tipped Sister Julia off
Hmm.
completely, right? So Julia was basically on to them and knew what they were here for, like right off the bat.
Because they were
Um,
pointing fingers at Carmen.
at Carmen, yeah. Uh, and so a lot of what was supposed to happen kind of got sped up.
Hmm.
So yeah, so they kind of went that way. They kind of realized that I came up with some reason why they didn't give her cyber eyes. She hasn't earned it yet or something like that,
Hmm.
which eventually satisfied them. But you can't have someone be all cute and innocent and not have them think that that's the villain.
Right. Exactly. And then there is Victoria, which it says is an unkempt older woman. Easily the worst of the cases here. She's bound to the hospital gurney, gagged, constantly twitches, make little noises. Just very, very poor state. They're saying that they cannot sense any demonic force in her, uh, but if they ever let her out of her restraint, she does terrible things. Um, it's vague, but enough to kind of gross you out a little bit. Um, it says if Storm Knights have magical and miracles that can sense demons or supernatural evil, none of that appears. Basically, her mind's just broken and chaotic, um, and it's being around her is uncomfortable. It says the original attack happened to her in Calais, which is where the Storm Knights had just came from, where she is from originally. And there is even a sidebar that goes into like mercy killing, which is kind of bad. I mean, this is something that if this happened in Aurora, no matter what your thoughts were, you'd be making corruption tests. There's a similar thing in one of those adventures. Uh, it just says like I guess this happened enough or was
In playtesting,
in play
probably.
testing to where they're like, hey, if this happens, the sisters are not happy. They don't care, special envoy or not. They're gonna try to. The mother is gonna try to summon a host. She's gonna, fight you back. They're gonna at least try to get you out of the monastery. Yeah, it's a very not uh, good thing to do, and in this case, the Storm Knights, their justifications would be on the wrong. But it does have a sidebar about it, which I figured I would mention. But there's basically nothing that the Storm Knights can do with her, talk to her, anything. It's just something sad that happens in the cyber papacy. Then there is Constance. It says is an older French woman, may or may not be present, and why she may or may not be present is, and I even want to say in the Delphi missions Rising Storm adventure, Hostile Takeover, which my group did play. That was this is like if they were able to save the woman that was possessed, this is that woman, and I don't even know if
Mhm.
her name was in that. So
No, it was
it,
just his mother.
yeah, it was just like the guy's mother. So also one of the things with Unhallowed Data, this is one of two that I know of where it can tie in with another adventure very, very easy. Actually written that way. So this person, if you earlier had done Hostile Takeover, you can introduce this. Your players will already know who this person was, and they could be like, "Oh, that's what happened to the lady who was possessed, and why they may not is because she was possessed by a demon, and if the party didn't do things quote unquote correctly, she could have died when they were trying to kill the demon that was inhabiting her. Um, so that is her story. Did you have anything to add on either Victoria or Constance?
For Victoria, it basically came down to Ray mocking the psychological care of the cyber papacy,
Mm,
and saying that this wasn't going to do anything, but also being a race ex thrall from Tharkold, she didn't really have much sympathy either. But this did kind of show them that the nunnery was legit, like there was a reason for it.
right.
And then Constance was not here because my group had played Hostile Takeover, not with these characters, but Constance had been shotgunned to death, and did not survive.
Okay, so then basically it just again it there aren't any men in this ward. Uh, they can do some more talking with Yulia. It says that she doesn't believe that there's chances of surviving possession or any different, but any male survivors would be sent to an abbey rather than the nunnery. So they keep it there. She invites Storm Knights to share dinner, brings out a simple but tasty soup. No
Mhm.
poisons or toxins. It actually says no poison. This is actually a good thing, along with bread and water. Everyone but Camilla and Victoria are at the meal. And basically, when everybody is nearly done, um,
While they were
G-
having their meal,
well,
Greymane was roasting a pig
pick
at his
at a
campsite.
pick and a poke. That is
Yeah.
something that as soon as players get that, it's like they don't know about it, and as soon as they find it, they're like, oh, or get it. They're like, we're gonna be using this forever. Um, yes, it is the best magical eye. But it says when everyone's nearly done, Yulia gathers some food to take to Camilla and Victoria because they weren't present. One because she's been strapped down, the other one you'll find out soon what happens. Before she is going to escort the women to their rooms or men out of the door, but she doesn't get it very far because she doesn't find Camilla in her room, and is basically, hey, we have a problem. Camilla is gone. So that's kind of the stop of scene one, which was the getting to the monastery, getting into the monastery through the crowd and dealing with those, meeting all of the major nuns and people being women being treated in this ward, this section of the monastery, dining, and then boom, we have a missing person. What's up there? So then it shifts to scene two, beach rules. Um, but it starts off now. You have an investigation. Hey, where's
Mhm.
Camilla? Unless your party is just like, yeah, we're gonna go to sleep. And the men are gonna go out and join the dwarf in his tent. So, how did your party react? If you remember your thoughts on the transition of getting ready to be let out, thinking you know what's going to go on, and then boom, one of the people
Eh,
is gone.
so this probably went a little bit differently than a lot of other groups because inside the monastery, they started the search but completely botched it and were unable to find anything. Meanwhile, outside, Greymane saw Camilla coming
Ah,
out of the secret passage and he followed her to the beach. So we find out that she has gone to a beach, and the players on the inside never find the secret passage. Okay, like they never find it. They get stuck and they get um distracted by something else, like by the crowd outside getting
mm-hmm.
rowdier. So it comes that the dwarf makes his way down to the beach, and so at Marbella, there's some people, but she loses him at some point, and he has to ask around, and people are like, what are you? And remember though that he does have some extra because like in Infiniverse exchange stuff, so he is able to walk around without his armor on
Mm-hmm.
if needed. And but basically, he finds her skinny dipping, and he's like, "Get the hell out of here! We gotta get you back." And she's like, "No, no, no!" And then these drones arrive, and that's like when things get real, basically.
Uh-huh.
That the my players loved the where was it so the drones are saying like, halt, you are under arrest. Indecent exposure and acts of lewdness are worth the loss of 50 piety points and are criminal offenses. The same in moonlight equates to witchcraft, increasing the penalty to 1,000 piety points and potential capital punishment. And so the whole like the fact that you're just swimming in the moonlight making it witchcraft was amazing. Um, so all these heralds start lighting up and like shining spotlights down on her and everything. So Greymane's like, okay, follow me then. We got to get you back. And ends up with he summons his armor and basically nothing can because he's pretty crunched, so nothing can hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
So he's guarding her. He gets her habit back because it's just on the beach, and they run back to the monastery. Um, they avoid the heralds somehow. I don't remember the specifics because I don't think he had any ranged weapons, so couldn't
Mm-hmm.
actually hit them. But I think they went into a tunnel or something. But eventually they made their way back, and she had to show him the secret door to get back into the monastery because the front was now like covered in this
Right.
huge like riot that was going on at this point.
Nice, nice. So, as a thing, what normally would would happen is the group would do their investigation inside of the monastery, and her room would provide some clues. Uh, an easy evidence analysis determined she was getting the cheapest and fastest available route to Marbella on the other side of the city.
I don't think they even went to her room.
Room, and then a standard find discovers the name of 4 or 5 boys carved into the bottom of her drawers, complete with little hearts around them. So yes, both of the party that I ran as well as the party I was in quickly determined, okay, she's going out to meet some boys at the beach or something like that. Um, let's go there. Then they could find a secret passage, which both of my groups did, filled with discarded boxes and stuff. But one of them has a crawlway, a little trap door, and it also has a large metallic canister that's used to transport the demons that they saw, which that stopped one of my party, the one that I was playing with, kind of got hung up over this of, okay, we got to do that thing, but we're coming back and we need to determine, this canister thing, what's going on with this. Uh, and there's no demon inside of it, but the canister is quite recognizable. Um, and then they go to Marbella. It does say that there's a few people, not a lot, but there are a dozen young people in conservative swimwear and are drinking, listening to music by a large bonfire. They're not very talkative because the church doesn't really condone parties, but unless they get too unruly, they haven't necessarily broken them up. Camilla isn't there. I remember in the party I was in, we actually went, talked, looked, didn't see her there, but did again see her swimming out there. I believe my character swam out to her, offered her, like you said, your party got the psychic to the Delphi Council, like said,
Mhm.
hey, you want to leave, we can provide you we can pay for transportation, we can get you to a safe house and blah blah. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, and then boom, all the drones come and shine the lights, and she went from 60 to 0 like a light switch, going back to the monastery, putting on the nun, zipping it up, repairing all little rips and tears I put in it, and I will be a good nun for the rest of my life when all of that stuff started. The huge loss of piety, her piety score, like did something to her that just like completely changed everything. Um, but then and in my adventure, this never happened because there's a possibility of a chase. So, but in the one that I played, we might have got into the chase, and my memory just wants to block it out. But there's some heralds, 1+1 each round. But it's basically to try to get you back to the
Yeah.
monastery.
I think that was the funny thing because it's 1+1 and there's only one
Uh huh.
PC there. It made it so there was like only two of
Two of
them.
them. So that's going on, and then it is a return to the monastery, which is scene 3, mobs and torches. It says if she was left to her fate, Sister Yulia attempts to contact them through the godnet to get them kind of back or whatever. But like I said, I want to say in both cases they got her and brought her back, but in the one that I played in, it was very much that instead of the light switch going on, it went off. It was like, I am ready to get out of here. Oh crap! Piety score negative. Nope, I'm I'm turning that
Right.
whole decision off. But then it leads into scene 3, mobs and torches, which the mob that your party might have been able to let simmer down a little bit. Hey, go off on your, disperse the crowd and stuff. They are back with a vengeance, and you can basically then there's the secret entrance by the cemetery is clear, so they can get back inside. And then the question is, do we sneak back inside, or do right away, or do we deal with the mob outside? um, and it's basically the mob is being incited by a demon. So that is where the demonic influence of this, the demon is having the town think that somebody inside or multiple people inside are going to be demonically possessed and cause problems where it's outside causing problems, which I think is quite humorous, ironic, and may be a complete twist for your party, depending on how they were thinking about things. So, how did the disperse the mob part go with you? Because there's a host that could get involved and
Yeah,
stuff
my
like that.
recollection is it didn't go well. That again, these characters had very little in the way of social
Mhm.
skills, so they so they couldn't find anything. They couldn't figure out where Camilla went. They said, I think Ray said it was the rapture or something like that. But eventually, yeah, the mob was coming in. They were able to figure out that something was causing it, like there was some
Right.
external situation, but they didn't know what it was. And there was a bit of a discussion of like, well, this is the church's problem. I mean, let the mob. The problem. They're actually right, but they tried to do something and like it didn't really work. So the mob did start attacking, which did summon the host, and the host
Hmm.
did start like shooting into the crowd and everything. And then meanwhile, Greymane and Camilla were coming in through the secret passage. Greymane sees the canister, like where the demons came from, and he recognized what it is. He also saw there's the shadow reliquary
Hmm.
down there as well. And he's like, "Oh, that's one of them computer things that." So I think they had some kind of comms,
Hmm.
and he was close enough now that he could talk because they're both inside the monastery.
Right.
So he let them know that there was a reliquary down here and a canister, and the others were like, "Huh, okay," and let him know about the like what was going on outside. He was like, "Who cares?" And then that's when they were called away by some other action going on downstairs.
Hmm.
So this is when things start to get a little crazy because they come down in they find that Victoria has been possessed again by the demon Glabzug, who was, I believe, they don't really say it for sure, but my impression was that that was the demon that was in the canister. He
Hmm.
was the one from Calais that had possessed Victoria originally, and so he was mailed here, and Julia was always the one who would sign for these sort of things, and so he was cracked open, let loose, and has been trying to get back into Victoria somehow,
Hmm.
which means he had to leave the monastery and then influence all the mob and everything, and then get back in the
Hit them.
monastery and possess her. So the party comes down. They find who else was down there? Jovenka, um, I believe. Do Yeah. Jovanka was there because she had a feeling. This was where it came because she had a precog,
Ah, right.
feeling that something was going to happen, and because she was also the one they were talking to about Camilla the most. And I think Ray said something that pissed her off because she got like rolled a mishap on a persuasion or something. But eventually, so they chased her down there, and so Glabzug possessing Victoria just like slaps Javenka senseless, and then the Storm Knights have to fight. And so we kind of rush it, we kind of skip ahead to the next scene at this point because Sister Julia knows who they are and knows
Hmm.
what they're doing. So she's like, well, this is the perfect time to try something
Hmm.
because there's only three of them. One of them's outside, and they're occupied by a demon. So now's my chance to make an attack, and she brings Carmen in. But we'll get to that.
Right. So basically, yes, there are. This is another one of those times where Storm Knights can do anything, but they can't do everything because there are multiple things going on. So if your Storm Knights get, go through the secret passage and that, there is that, hey, here's a terminal that is a reliquary that, we can try to hack into. And in the party that I was part of, half of our party did that. So one of them was, had a cyber deck and had a couple of tag-alongs that went with him because he was not in any way, shape, or form combative. So I think he even maybe took the dwarf in, with him, and then the rest of us then got distracted elsewhere and went up. That triggered some more things going. The one that I game mastered, I remember them. One of the players was playing like an Instagram influencer, and so did have the persuasion to kind of calm the crowd down, so the host and the Samson hover tanks didn't disperse the crowd forcefully. But there's a bunch of information that if they do hack into the shadow reliquary, that they are able to get to determine, hey, was the backgrounds that were said, were they true, false, whatever. Yovanka does note her psychic potential and records her status as potentially dangerous, but also potentially useful if the church can find some way to harness her abilities. Um, Camilla was never possessed. Her family was rich. She was a little out of control brat, so to speak. And they were like, you get to go to the nunnery, so we don't have to
Yeah.
deal with you. Here's a bunch of money. Church, take care of her because we don't want to deal with her. Ophelia, or Ophelia, however you want to say that, she was a Delphi Council operative that turned in her teammates who are all now dead. And she became, a double agent that gave the church a lot of information about Delphi Council safe houses, personnel procedures, etc. So she's a traitor turncoat. Then Carmen's file is only flagged as partial compatibility, which will come up later, and nothing else. Basically, it just says partial compatibility. Everything else has been deleted here. Um, it does say the rest of her file is already gone, sent to a linked reliquary in Rio de Janeiro. I don't think in any of this the game master, either myself or the other one, allowed that to even be known. I think it's more of it's for the game master to understand what was going on. But if they
Oh, I did.
did you, or you can give it if they roll high enough. Um, it does say that Victoria's file is the most unsettling of all. There are extensive notes about the various traumas she experienced in Calais at the hands of a demon. As you said, Glabzug, and Sister Julia believes that he still exists and has a connection, and Julia tortures Victoria every night in hopes that she can observe the results of him arriving to rejoin with his former host. Um, and she does suspect correctly that he's the reason that the town folk is forming mobs and stuff. But then there are trouble inside, as you stated, that he's managed to sneak inside the ward, finally follow the trail of the Victoria. So there gets to be a point where the Storm Knights realize that Victoria is, if they go to her, I think you said it. Yovanka had a feeling she can get to the Storm Knights and say, "Hey, I have this feeling Victoria's in trouble." The Storm Knights can go to Victoria. She is possessed by uh, Glabzug, and then there can be a backhand from him that knocks Ivanka senseless. But it does give just enough time to reach them before he can do anything else. This is one that I do not remember the one that I game mastered exactly how they split up or if they did, but I do definitely remember in the one that I played, there were the people in the Godnet trying to get that stuff going on, finding that information, and the rest of us went to check on Victoria and encountered Glabzug.
Glabzug.
So we were like actually split the party, and even though I'm not just cursory glance at the Shadow Reliquary, I am not seeing any fighting stuff, but it does have a DSR. I want to say that the game master might have added something to make it a little more
Mm.
exciting going on with that DSR because there was definitely that going on plus us outside of the Godnet going on that kind of can really ramp up the tension because you're used to a full party of Storm Knights and they can get split. And it can even split if some of them are taking care of the mob outside and some went in. So there can be various chances of party getting split, and it's not necessarily an easy fight. Glabzug has 3 wounds. He has a nice 15 toughness, 5 possibilities, a lot of things like fear and dread. He has gross, insidious. He can. It's a special soaking puppet. There's a lot of special abilities. So Glabzug is definitely somebody, a threat that game masters you'll want to read ahead of time. Otherwise, you're going to be concentrating on his combat stats and not actually look at some of the cool things that he can do. Um, but I remember the one thing I do remember about my party in that I game mastered, they thought this was the big end. They thought this was the big
Right.
bad guy, and it's sort of set up like it could be, like this is but it's a very minor compared to what is going to reach the group or what the Storm Knights are going to encounter later, which we won't get into. This will be the last scene that we do today. But do you have any last remarks on the Shadow Reliquary, and or Glabzug?
Well, the Shadow Reliquary, as I mentioned, they totally like missed everything in the first half of this adventure, and then they brought this guy in, and now they never failed any of these. So he like completely dominated DSR, found everything,
Mm-hmm.
but not yet. It hasn't happened yet. It happened after all of this went down,
Ah,
basically.
so they came
And
back,
yeah, well,
or
you'll
sort
find
of. Okay.
out. And Glabzug, I remember it was like I at some point I need to really figure out how this possession versus can how do demons really work in the
Hmm.
cyber papacy, because every one of them is a little bit
Different,
different.
right?
But it is kind of like almost proto nightmare because you have to get rid of all of its possibilities before he actually starts taking damage.
Hmm.
And again, you have to be careful whether you're going to wound Victoria or not. Although my players, it's not that they're like, even though there's multiple evidence in this very act that there are survivors of demonic possession,
Hmm.
they are always of the mindset if someone's possessed by a demon, well, it's too late for them, kind of a thing. So the
Once
fight
you turned
against
into the
Glabzug,
zombie, you can't turn back.
and it is worth mentioning that Greymane was like by far the biggest fighter
Hmm.
in the group. He was like the melee like monster. So Ray was pretty good too, but she was more speed based. But so it was those three fighting Glabzug, and it was a rough fight for
Hmm.
them, especially because partway through it they got ambushed.
Ah,
But yeah.
nice. So we'll go ahead and pause here. Next time we will pick up with scene 4. which is I thought this act was very eventful through a lot of curveballs. And
Mhm.
next time I'll get into a little behind the scenes things because when I went to game master this, I was a little bit confused at things. So I actually asked one of the authors, Brian Reeves, what was kind of what was a few of the purposes that kind of brought things together. So I will want to mention that next time for game masters. So if you're trying to figure out,
Now you have to.
yeah, why is all this stuff happening is cool, but what is the reason behind it? um, that makes sense. That's where my confusion was. And then once I realized what was going on, I'm like, oh yeah, now it makes a lot of sense, and it was enjoyable as me as a game master watching my players stumble and figure out, you know,
Yeah.
what was going on. So you'll have to visit with us next time to get the conclusion of this act to see where the big twist is and what's going on with the Unhallowed Data as an entire adventure. But until then, we hope. Sorry, I wanted to remind everybody you can email us, so do the email thing
Mhm.
first. So you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. You can send us emails. We will read your emails. If you have questions, we will answer to the best of our ability. If you have comments, we will comment back on that. And now, until next time, we hope you have fun in your own Cosmverse. Bye.
Bye.